Hi, super glad to be here. Hope everybody enjoy your lunch. My name is Veronica. I'm a senior experience designer at Adobe and super pleasant to be here today. So today I want to spend a little bit of time to talk about designing for generative AI. So we're entering this era where the tools that we build start to shift human creativity. And today I want to talk about this foundational shift and how we can craft scalable, human-centered experience and how design decisions can ripple far beyond the screen. So let's first by telling you a story about Ada Lovelace. So in 1840, one day she sat down and she wrote something that no one has seen before. She wrote down an algorithm. Not for a computer, because computer didn't exist back then, but for a hypothetical machine that only lived in blueprints. So she imagined this machine, maybe one day it can do more than just calculating numbers. Maybe one day it can compose music or create art. I don't think she's just ahead of her time, because the same spirit is alive today, but the scale and the stake has been completely changed. So similar to her moment of foresight, we are now in position to reimagine the very foundation of how we can interact with this new intelligent system. So I have seen the glimpse of this shift on my early experiment. So a few years ago, I created this tool using a crude text-to-image model, trying to visualize poetry. So for example, like this one over here, like on the left is a line of poem, and on the right-hand side is the output from the generation. But as you can see, the result is like abstract, beautiful, but very often it's broken. Just fast forward a few years later, and this is the result that you will get from the same prompt. So from the quality to stylistic treatment to the amount of detail in any aspect, it's just simply astonishing. So these experiments are now actually becoming a core part of how creative professionals work, how enterprise scale their content, and how brand build their experiences. The leap from a toy to a tool to an infrastructure just happened way faster than anyone has expected before, because we're experiencing this quantum leap. Gen AI isn't just a feature layer on top of existing workflow. It's a brand new type of medium. They are probabilistic, emergent, and also participatory. What used to be built as isolated tools that follows clear instructions is now evolving into an interconnected system that probably behaves in unpredictable ways. So in the past few years, I've been spending time designing for this shift. I help design Gen AI tools like Adobe Firefly for creators and everyday users. But working at this intersections of emerging technology, experience design, and large-scale system allows me to collaborate really closely with industry leaders and translate those intelligence into experiences that feels meaningful, responsible, but also scalable. But more than anything, I spent the past few years really asking this question, what does it mean to design for a system that evolves while we're still trying to learn how to use them? So today's talk is really about how to design that space. I will walk you through how to work with AI, this new type of design material, and look within its inner logics. And also how to create experiences that still places human at the center while we are reshaping the culture. And finally, I will just close with a few ways that can elevate your practice, your team, and also your businesses, and that you can lead through in this uncertainty, but also adapt to it. So before we design with AI, we definitely need to understand what it really is, right? Why is it different from anything that we have designed before? So let's start with something that all of us are familiar with, dumplings, or mandu, we call it here. I grew up eating this very specific dumplings that my mom made, hand-chopped, seasoned just right. And sometimes I would just want to recreate them, and I would just call her, and she would just say, oh, just a handful of cabbages, some soy sauce. You know when it smells, right? Typical Asian mom, they never tell you the specific instructions. So over the years, I graduated from the scribble notes to cookbooks to Googling recipes. But now today, you can do the same thing, and more than anything, you can just ask ChatGPT, right? This isn't just a better recipe lookup, it's organic, dynamic, and flexible based on your needs. So this evolution, right, from the static instructions to the interactive system is the shift that the design we're facing. So although it's built on code, it actually behaves like something biological, something that evolves. So I like to reframe AI not as a tool, but as a design material. So just like wood has grain, clay has memory, like AI has its own unique textures because it has training data, feedback loop, and unpredictable edges. And this is why when we are talking about designing for AI, it isn't just about crafting a smooth interface anymore. It's really about asking how these things learn, responds, and evolves. And that's what makes it so fascinating. And let's dig one layer deeper, right? If AI behaves like a living material, like the data is the food that feeds it. And like any living system, AI will become what it consumes. So now let's look beneath the surface and really looking into the data that shapes it. So let's take a basic classification task over here, right? Like to train a neural network, the difference between an apple and an orange, we need to feed thousands of images into the data set and have everything collected, labeled, and sorted into the system. But once you realize how the data is assembled, like you realize anything can become data. It could be a click, it could be a pulse, it could be a scribble, or where your eyes are looking at, or how much your heads are tilted, or even selecting a CAPTCHA can help feed the model's understanding of the world. So these are not just UX artifacts. I like to consider them as high-resolution behavioral proxies. So what does that mean? Behaviors are translated into data that helps the model to really understand the world. And at scale, they shape how AI systems infer intent, personalize outputs, and also automate decisions. So for those who are building products at scale, this is where the line between strategy and design starts to blur, right? For AI-first system, it's no longer just about what the user do, but how they're doing it. So the user behavior starts to become the signal. And the way you structure UI is really critical because that determines what kind of data is being captured. So this is where design will start act as a critical layer for data pipeline. And lastly, data capture, of course, it does not equal to data value. This is where the leadership must align on in terms of data quality as a competitive advantage. But here's the flip side, right? Data is never neutral. And AI systems don't always know what it's learning, and we actually don't always know what we're teaching. So probably many of you have seen this before, right? A model once mistook a blueberry muffin for a chihuahua. It's super funny until the twist comes, because earlier we said data is food, but what happens if the fridge is full of junk? That's actually what this project looked into. It's called Models All the Way Down. So it looks into image data sets that used to train large-scale AI systems, so millions of them. And you start to notice a very strange pattern. So children are getting categorized as brats, or women are being described as nannies or shop girls. Like photos of people, they're being scraped from the internet and quietly sorted into categories that echoes the old hierarchy, whether that's race, gender, power, or class. And of course, AI being biased is nothing new. We all know that, but it doesn't stop at image. The bias also baked into language data as well. So in many large-scale data sets, non-English data are usually underrepresented, poorly translated, or inconsistently labeled. So that means like a global voice is usually being filtered through English or lost in the margins. But even for models that were trained on English text, they are also very often reflects a very westernized tone, usually US-centric. I don't think no one person wrote these labels or scored a data set maliciously, but together they form a worldview. Like one that erodes into a model layer by layer without much questions. And the model isn't just reflecting the world, it's actually reflecting someone's versions of the world. But sometimes what's most dangerous is not what's in the data, it's actually what's been left out. So this project that hits me the most is called the Library of Missing Data Sets. It's by artist and researcher Mimi Onuoha. So it's actually a physical installation. You enter a room, you see a cabinet, and the cabinet is full of folders. Each has a label with a data set. But they should exist, they actually don't exist. So things like people excluded from public housing because of criminal record, or communities that got displaced by environmental disaster but were never reported. These folders, like I said, they are labeled, but they are empty intentionally because data has never been collected or they are never being deemed to be valuable enough to collect. So this is such a quiet but powerful reminder of the things that we don't track, we don't protect, things we don't see, and we don't design for. And when we train AI system on things incomplete or one-sided histories, we are risk reinforcing a future that's just as incomplete. So when we're talking about design for AI, it's really not about building beautiful interfaces. It's really about asking what is behind the curtain and what kind of story the system is trying to tell. So let me give you an example. When we were designing an early stage of Adobe Firefly, we work very closely with our researchers to audit and shape the data set, and especially around professions. So our goal is that when someone enters a doctor or a lawyer into the prompt bar, the result don't just reflect the majority or the status quo. It actually shows a possibility. So what I'm about to show you is a moment that almost moved me to tears. So I prompted an astronaut into the prompt bar, and this is the result that we'll get. I got an Asian woman in a spacesuit. And I think this might resonate with many of you over here. This representation is something that I have never seen before growing up, either in textbooks, media, or just stock photos. It's so small, but it made me feel so seen. And it's just a single AI output, but made me feel the quiet power of the work behind the scene. And of course, it took a lot of work and a lot of collaboration to make this result possible, because we realized we're not just designing tools, we're actually shaping the narratives that shapes people. So that was a perfect example of when design become a strategic function, because design don't just present AI, it actually shapes how data gets captured and represented. So once you have design to be an integral part of your AI system creation, you will start to see these three major transformations. So you will get to see how interface design could be translated into data pipeline quality, how user behavior can inform model learning, and of course, the decision that you make with the design system will determine the algorithmic outcomes. And as leader, you should already know that AI scales fast, but what it scales depends on what it learns, and the learning usually starts at the interface. So for better product outcome, design needs to be a core part of your AI strategy, not just a layer on top. Because if you're not shaping it properly, you could be scaling mistakes. So now we look beneath the surface, right? Like the data, the training, the invisible logic. But AI doesn't just exist in the background. AI comes to life when somebody interacts with it. So this is where we should start talking about users and how designer can shape the experience to make AI feel a little bit more understandable, navigable, and ideally just a little bit magical. So here, I will walk you through three key aspects for designing for users in the AI experience: control, personalization and contextualization, and trust. So these are not just UX best practices, those are also signals of where user AI interaction is heading next. So let's start with control, because what AI is doing the heavy lifting, user still needs a way to steer the ship. So a good example is that in early Firefly days, prompting was all we had, right? It just requires a lot of trial and error, and very often it's just frustrating that you have to prompt so many times. So we start zooming into a specific part or specific process of the prompting generation. So we notice that style actually works differently from other parts of the prompt. So user, they don't want to rewrite the style part of the prompt because they just want to really easily influence the visual results. So by working with our researchers and our product team, we get to create this feature called style effects. So these are predefined outputs or inputs that allows the user to shape the results without having to become prompt engineers. So Basically, we're able to take the prompt and transform it into thumbnails or tiles. And through this way, we're able to lower the learning curve, enable experimentation, and really give the user more ownership in the generation process. And this is what I mean, right? We hope by displaying the style options in the corresponding categories and accompanying each option with a thumbnail, make the experience accessible to all users of all skill levels. So for example, if you see anime, you click on the tile, that's just applied to your generation. It really encourages the user to start experimenting and take ownership of their experience. And later in project concepts or Firefly boards, we evolve that idea even further. So where user can literally directly grab any style from any images because we use LLM behind the scene to interpret it. So we start to notice when users feel like they're in control, they actually create more, they stay longer, and they trust even more. But control isn't just toggles and sliders, right? Like, it's really about designing a system that allows people to be fast or slow, precise or exploratory. And this is where multimodality and dynamic interaction comes to play. So multimodality is about having the ability to interpret different inputs like text, 3D, video, audio. Some of you might already seen it yesterday, paired up with dynamic interaction that responds in real time. So imagine being able to generate a brush based on the artwork that you just created, or creating a texture for your 3D shape. So it really changes who gets to play and invites different kind of thinkers into the room. And very recently, we brought the video and audio capability to Firefly. So with controls similar to what we saw earlier called style effects, user can quickly customize the video outputs and even start with their own images. And similarly, in Firefly scene to image, user can easily create and adjust 3D shapes using different interaction mode, whether that's gesture control, text command, or switching between different camera angles. This is where interaction doesn't just stop being like features, it's actually being more about helping the user to feel like they're being understood. So when we talk about multimodality, it's really about having the ability to lower the barrier for creativity, but also letting people to express in their own ways. So here we're seeing why giving user controls and agency matters, whether that's moving people away from a prompt-first interaction or bringing multimodality inputs. When people feel like they're in control, we were able to build more trust and scale adoption. It also sets the foundation for something long-term. Now, let's shift from control to something more ambient, but equally important. And that's personalization and contextual intelligence. So when we're talking about AI, we usually focus on its capabilities. But from a user perspective, that maybe matters less. What matters to them is when and how those things shows up. But with AI, we can actually start creating experiences that can be personalized or surfaced contextually and being deeply embedded into the workflow. So here's the example. Take contextual taskbar in generative fill. It just shows up when you need it. Like, it gives you relevant information, actions, and feature during a specific step of the user journey. This isn't just UX improvement, it could be a business accelerator because it really shortens the time of learning and also increase the frequency of successful outcomes. Another example is that we can take this further by embedding the personalization into the creative process. So when you have some reference images, you can just drop that in Firefly, right? And the system can refer to its style or composition properties and just adapts to it. So here's an example of a creator where he used his sketch as a composition reference and his puffer jacket as the style reference. And he's able to create a collection of letters that's visually consistent, but also unique to him. Of course, another example is text to vector in Illustrator. You can just sample your own art style and have it automatically applied to the generation process. These are small moments of personalization that creates emotion stickiness. And they're also the foundation for something much bigger. I think yesterday's presentation also touched on it, and we call it the agentic AI. So let's put this in perspective, right? Like, step back. We started with static tools, those one-size-fits-all interface. And then we move to contextual UX or personalized UX, where tools start to respond intelligently. And here's where we at. Agentic AI, they're really systems that actively shapes the workflow, co-pilot the process, and really elevate what the user can do on their own. So these systems are not just reactive, they're actually collaborative. Like they're not waiting for you to prompt them, they're suggesting the next step for you, kind of like a partner. So a good example is that recently we had this vision piece. We imagined where the creative workspace doesn't have the AI just sitting along the toolbar. They actually moves with you. Like it knows when to assist, when to step back, and when to ask questions. And this might be more familiar to many of you. In Photoshop, for example, we imagine an agent that can analyze your image and provides contextual recommendations, whether that's brighten up the image, remove the distraction, or change the color of the sky. So this type of agent intelligence create experiences that are not just personalized, but also profoundly efficient. This is where personalization, contextualization becomes super powerful. Now when it gets what you want, but actually supports the way you work. So to recap, context-aware tools and personalization really reduces friction and make the tool feels familiar. And now we are entering the era of agentic AI. We can further design the intelligence more deeply into the workflow. And this way, you're not just improving the product, you can actually increase usage, deepen brand affinity, but also earn your users' loyalty. And let's talk about one of the most strategic challenges in deploying AI, trust. So why design is critical over here? Because when the experience is designed properly, AI will get smarter when users speak up, whether that's through explicit feedback or implicit signals. So here's an example in Firefly. Users are not just passive users. They can actively shape the tool itself. So with the built-in feedback mechanisms, each interaction actually becomes an opportunity to improve the model and also enhance the experiences. And eventually, it will help build trust. But also, of course, trust isn't just built through interaction. Trust can also be built through transparency. And this is why when we were designing Firefly, we implemented content authenticity initiatives, and we call it the CAI. So this is an open source standard that embeds metadata into digital content. So user can see how the image is made, whether AI is involved, what edits occurs along the way. So it's kind of like a nutrition label for digital media. So in today's era, right, everything looks so real, and users need to be able to know what's real and what's misinformation. So you can actually come to the CI website today and just upload any images, and when you start to see this is generated by AI, this is the model that's being used, and here's the process, it really builds the trust, not just in the output, but also in the platform that provides it. So the job of design over here isn't just explaining the output, it's actually about translating it into something that non-experts can make sense of and create trust and transparencies along the way. So to summarize, trust really is one of the most valuable and fragile currency in AI. Like with transparent communications, user will be able to comfortably interact with the AI system, and the feedback loop will be able to translate participations into product improvements. And of course, design plays a critical translation role in building trust and transparency. So when we're talking about designing for AI, it's not about what the experience looks like or what it says. It's about thinking about how it may impact our user in the future. So in this section, we looked at the surface, right? How we can design for AI. But like the conclusion is really simple. Like no matter how advanced the system gets, design always starts with user and ends with how they feel. So to truly lead in this space, like we actually should start looking beyond like the interface or the outputs. Like we need to start asking what kind of culture are we building through these kind of systems? So this is all of you probably familiar with. Like before Walt Disney, he was really envisioning this future where he's able to tell a full-length story using animation back when cartoon was seen like a distraction. But with Snow White, he's able to launch something more than just a film. He actually was able to create a cultural shift. So it showed that animation can hold emotions. It also changed what generation believe what a hero looks like, what childhood should feel like, and also what family entertainment should be. And even today, like with stories like Encanto or Turning Red, like they really provides a unique perspective, but also brings a different culture into the mainstream. And this is what designing for culture looks like. So Gen AI is in a very similar sense. So design plays a central role in shaping what becomes normal, what gets remembered, and also what endures. So we should start to ask the question about what happens when these tools start to democratize creation, but also risk eroding craftsmanship and commodifying creativity. So when creative assets can be made in seconds, their value also can become diluted. So this might be something that you are recently noticing is this new glass fruit cutting thing on social media. I don't know why it's not playing. Yeah, it should be playing. But initially it feels very mesmerizing. You just have the knife cutting through the glass fruit. But like very soon, like the video like you see over here, they're just being copied over and over again. Like it started as a creativity, quickly becomes repetition. And of course, you got a glimpse of this because when oversaturation of the content becomes a thing, like this issue called model collapse becomes inevitable. So where future AI models will be unknowingly trained on AI content, and through rounds of iteration, it will just be quickly spewing out nonsense. So what's at stake is how we protect identity, preserve authorship, but also cultivate human creativity in the age where machine generates everything. So if we don't design for these changes, we're actually optimizing ourselves into mediocrity. So that's the real opportunity to design systems that don't just react to culture, but help shape it with care, diversity, and intention. So lastly, I will give you 3 action items that to take with you and help you innovate in this uncertainty landscape. So first, definitely build an interdisciplinary team, because no one builds AI system alone. The best team definitely combines designers who ask the right question, researchers who dig into behaviors, and engineers who understand the model nuances. And the second recommendation is that the old UX probably won't cut it, and this is where we have to redefine what success looks like through new design metrics. So we can ask questions like, do people feel confident, or does the trust evolve over time? So these signals are early indicators of long-term value and also product stickiness. And lastly, models don't come with intent, they inherit from data. So inclusive, high-integrity data is just the start. And at the same time, we should also increase data literacy within the team and with users, because when they're fluent with AI, they can steer with clarity and creativity. So take these with you. Think of this as your team's creative toolkit and what's coming next. So let's just zoom back out. This is the foundational shift that we have been looking at. User generates data through interaction. Data trains the model and informs the design decision. And the design shapes our culture and in return shapes how human continues to behave and create. This is the generative intelligence design cycle. And we are not designing static products anymore. Instead, it will be a continuously evolving system. This is both a responsibility, but also a creative invitation. Because the uncertainty of the future isn't something for us to fear. It's actually the canvas for all of us to create. Just like what we saw with Ada Lovelace in the beginning, today we have the opportunity to create a system that will shape what the next generation of intelligence looks like and feel like. So I will leave you with this question. What kind of intelligence are we architecting for the future, and how is design shaping it? Thank you.